failed this universe.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man.
It's superhero TV series month on this channel, and last week I dropped a video on Gotham, one of my favorite that I think is the most underrated of the superhero TV show genre, and I feel like we have no choice but to dive into the Arrow, the one that sparked and started it all after the boom of the MCU. They got everything going in the superhero TV show drama. I feel like it's only right we do this one second. Now, we all watching this know the Arrow has some of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows compared to all the shows in the superhero TV series, but we know it overall set the foundation and archetype that all these superhero TV shows begin to follow, and it eventually got so big it created its own world, intertwining a lot of these shows with one another, as we all know as the Arrowverse. Now, the Arrowverse, of course, has come to an end about 2 to 3 weeks now with the ending of the Flash, which we're gonna try to dive into probably by the end of this month, hopefully. But the Arrow is what started all of this. And going back and watch the Arrow, it breaks my heart, because when I was first watching this, I was 10 years old. It came out like 2012. I was loving it. It was so exciting, new, a breath of fresh air, as I really wasn't into superhero TV series as much, or superheroes at all really, and this was kind of nice, a breath of fresh air, and it wasn't on no mass scale. It was a local vigilante playing hero and trying to save his city. Now, what breaks my heart about this series is every time I go back and watch the first few beginning seasons, I fucking love it. I can't get enough of it. I'm enjoying it so much. Like, I literally have rewatched this show as at least 5 or 6 times, at the very least the beginning seasons. The later seasons I start to dread and fall off. I can't make it through. And I think the Arrow as a superhero TV show has one of the biggest fall offs and drop offs as far as quality, consistency, and everything. It begins to start to feel like a soap opera and less of a superhero TV series. Everything from likable characters to villains to writing to everything just starts to decline and get worse. And now, of course, in retrospect, going back and watch the series, also with the Arrowverse coming to an end, there are a lot of things you could point and look to as to why this decline in quality really happened. And once again, it hurts because, like I said, the beginning seasons were so fucking good, and this is easily still my favorite series out of any of them in this genre to rewatch. So what I'm gonna do for this video is each section is gonna be a part that I feel like was vital to the success or to the downfall of this show. So that's the better way to do it, and in between those parts I could throw in the villains, the characters, and talk about how those elements help or hurt the show in general. And that's just a better way to do it for Arrow, because if we did it like season per season, post season 3 it would just be all negativity, and I don't really want that. So I just want to go flow in and out of things that help and hurt. So that's the way this video is gonna go. But yeah, we just have to get into it. This video is the tragic downfall of the Arrow. We're gonna talk about the good, the bad, the downright ugly. So let's get into it. As usual, you guys leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below in the comments what superhero TV show you want to see next before this month is out. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Oh, and shout out this GOAT Robinator on YouTube. I was able to get a lot of clips and things I wanted for this video from him, so I'll leave a link to his channel down below in the description. Like I say, he's a GOAT, and all his edits and videos are just straight fire. So I think if you love Arrow or any superhero TV shows, I think you should go check him out. But like I said, let's get into it. Now, we have nowhere else to start on Arrow but the flashbacks. The flashbacks are so vital to the storytelling and the world building of this show. So for you guys that don't know, the Arrow, for the first 5 seasons, the story goes in and out of the main storyline and flashbacks for each of the first 5 seasons, each season representing one of the years he was stuck on Lian-Yu. And this helps so much with the superhero genre of TV shows, like I pointed out with Gotham. time, because most were 20 episodes per season. So like I pointed out with Gotham, how season 1 they had the main story, and then in the B plots they set up future characters and conveniences and stories to happen, like Scarecrow, like Jerome, like Ivy Pepper becoming Poison Ivy, and it just helped overall keep the story flowing and going. And this works amazingly in Arrow, because just as the main story gets tiring, overbearing, or just a bit boring or drawn out, then you get to switch over to the flashbacks and we get new pieces of information about his journey and how he is who we see today in the present. And we also get introduced to new characters that's going to play important parts later. We get great setup for them, and it just overall improves the storytelling and the world building for the Arrow. And I would be lying if I didn't say some of the flashbacks were a bit tedious or uninteresting at times, but they always found good ways to connect it back to the main story and have impact into what we're seeing now. So watching the flashbacks always felt good or in some level of importance to the story. And because, like I said, his journey of how he became who he was fulfilled and fully shown to us by the end of season 5. Like I said, each season represent 1 year away from the island or away from home, and I feel like because of that, then the show should have ended after 5 seasons. Now it didn't, for obvious reasons that we're probably going to get into later, but it should have ended after 5 seasons. And I think them not doing that definitely contribute to a big drop off in quality of each and every episode. Now I would be honest, the quality was already starting to fade and drop throughout season 4. We'll talk about you later, season 4, but it was already starting to diminish a little. But definitely once the flashbacks was over, it felt like something was missing. The episode by episode just weren't as interesting. You started to see them drag out a little more. And I believe they tried to redo flashbacks later on. They tried to do Wild Dog flashback of how he became who he was in season 6, I believe. And in season 7 or 8, they did the like back and forth thing again between about his kids and the future, and I don't know, it just wasn't the same because the whole setup was about Oliver Queen and his journey. So doing it for the other characters just never felt natural or right. It didn't feel the same. It didn't feel like the Arrow from the beginning of the series. And I don't think a lot of people understand how vital and important these flashbacks were for this episodic theme they had going on of a push or pull. It took this for him to get here, and it basically helped tell the entire story of his journey, which is why once again his journey and the story should have been over after 5 seasons. It should have came to a conclusion. And once again, like I said, his flashbacks about his journey always play key connections into the main story and our main villains, which is our next segue. We gotta talk about the villains of the Arrow. Now, I am of the opinion that the best villains are always the most personal, the one with the key connections to our main protagonist, like Darth Vader, like Reverse Flash, and so on and so forth. And for Oliver, throughout this series, we had some top-notch villains, and no pun intended, we literally had some top villains, and they all played key details in his character development, the world building, and the storytelling, which is the 2 most important elements when it comes to telling stories to me: world building and storytelling. And that goes without saying that the best villains throughout the Arrow series already had ties and connection to Oliver, and all the worst ones was just didn't. They were just not good. And you could see that literally throughout every villain. The first villain, the Archer, Malcolm Merlin, who is his best friend's father. Not only his best friend's father, but his sister's dad, his sister's real dad. And not only his sister's real dad, but the man that killed his dad, who took down the boat at the beginning of the series. The connections and everything worked out so well, and it was so good a first villain for him to go up against. It was everything his dad wanted him to come back and fight against, and then it ultimately was made better by him failing to accomplish his goal by the end of season 1. And somehow they always play these roles of the personal roles with so much conviction and belief. Like this line right here gave me chills the first time I heard it.
Yes! They deserve to die! All of them! The way she died!
And like I said, he was such a good first villain because he taught Oliver so much about returning. Originally, Oliver came back just crossing names out the list, and that made Oliver realize the city don't need somebody crossing names off the list. They need an actual hero. He also set up future characters and plots. He was from, of course, the lead of assassins. He wore the gear. He captured the world building and storytelling we got from Oliver upon his return, talking about the list, talking about his dad and the corruption and everything that was going on, and Malcolm Merlyn embodied all of that, and he was a, like I said, excellent first villain. Next we have Slade fucking Wilson, Deathstroke. There's not enough things you could say about this character. Then he's done so well in this series. Like, this is probably the best actor and interpretation of Slade, of Deathstroke, I've ever seen, and that's not an exaggeration. His setup from season 1 of who he was to become, setting that all the way up from season 1 and catapulting it into who I believe is my favorite and the best villain of the series in season 2, is just ultimately done so well. He has so much history with this character on the island, surviving with one another, turning into enemies, coming back, killing his mom. It just so much goes on. Like I said, the best villains are the ones that's the most personal. And once again, Slade, this villain, teaches Oliver a lesson about his decisions, his choices, and his past coming back to haunt him. Every move and decision he makes has consequences, negative or positive. It will affect a lot of people in different ways, and he will have to learn to deal with that. And it's not a coincidence that Malcolm Merlyn, Slade, and of course the next villain we're going to talk about, all were acting out of revenge and pain and hurt. And last but certainly not least, Adrian Chase, Prometheus, who most people believe is the best villain of the entire series in the best season of the entire series. And that's because of how personal things are. He wants revenge, wants to show Oliver who he really is. He's literally obsessed with showing Oliver that this righteousness crusade is all an act. He's really a killer, and he wants Oliver to admit it. And it doesn't get no personal to Adrian Chase going after his son, taking him and his whole family back to Lian, blowing the island up. And I feel like that's why a lot of people believe, or they think, he is the best villain in the entire series, because especially after that dud of a season 4, he revitalized what Arrow originally was, and his vendetta against Oliver greatly carried the entire season 5. It was strong the whole way through. And I think in every other season you see drastic drop in the quality where the villain isn't personal or up to par with the 3 villains I just named. Even Ra's al Ghul, with his such cool and epic moments he had, I love him way better than he was in the Gotham series for sure. He still wasn't on the level of these other 3 villains. And even Damien Dark. Season 4 has to be the worst season of Arrow by far, and that's mainly due to Damien Dark and then the powers, which we'll talk about when we get to the Arrowverse. But like, that villain was just terrible, and I believe after that we had Ricardo Diaz. Villains should help tell the story and the journey of our main protagonists. It should lead them into character development, making hard choices, getting over obstacles, and I feel like they had a lot of villains in the show that did that and succeeded very well, but then they also had the ones that failed and didn't feel necessary, especially once again, as I mentioned, this is a TV show with 20 plus episodes per season. So when you do this and you have this villain that's failed, and you also remove the flashback aspects that don't switch in and out, things get way more dull and boring and just dreadful to watch. And of course, you cannot talk about Arrow without talking about the fights. Even in season 1, I never realized how insane the fight choreography was, even way back then. And of course, like I said at the beginning, Arrow has some of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, even when it comes to their fights. Like, everybody goes crazy over this Daredevil fight scene. I believe it's the hallway fight scene everybody loves from Daredevil. Now, In season 1 of Arrow, where he goes and rescues Walter after Walter's been kidnapped by Malcolm Merlin for like 6 months, that's way better. I don't care what any of you say. That hallway fight scene is 10 times better in my opinion. And the fights work so well of playing off the flashbacks as well, because they go kind of hand in hand. We see when he's learning, becoming, we see him getting taught by Shadow, Slade, and how that comes to play in the present. So the flashbacks work in that aspect as well, especially with the big moments and big fights, like when Slade finally returns and we get the flashback of them fighting, and we also get them fighting in the present. It all just makes the moment feel bigger. There of course are always the occasional dud fights where the hype is built around it, it doesn't live up to it, or just that some of the episodes were lazy, as they were kind of like filler episodes, so the fight choreography wasn't up to par or up to standards. It was a bit just lazy overall. But for a lot of the moments we wanted to see and got to see, it was crazy. My favorite gotta be the first fight between him and Ra's al Ghul, when he's trying to protect Dia and Ra's al Ghul just stumps him, takes his weapons, kicks him off the mountain. That shit was so fucking cool. I literally think hand-to-hand combat is the most fun form of fighting to watch, especially in superhero movies. I understand with the powers and everything, but I don't know. Hand-to-hand with good choreography just always is gonna do it for me. It makes it feel more brutal, more up close, more personal. Like I said, the villain should be, so it connects with the flashback, it connects with the villains, and this is something they're able to carry with the fights throughout the show, because it's hand-to-hand combat up to the point where even when he's in prison, it's up close, it's brutal, it's personal, because he put a lot of these guys away. They know he's the Arrow now, they're gunning for him, so the fights always got that feel to it. Once you try to maneuver or go just a little bit too fast or do a little bit too much at once, that's where everything starts to fall a bit, and that's where we get into the Arrowverse. And then we have the Arrowverse, which was a great catalyst in the rise and success and the popularity of the Arrow. But I would argue that isn't even the case, because the Arrow was basically 3 seasons in before this Arrowverse really got created and connected. And by then, it was already spectacular at the top of his game. And I would argue the first 3 seasons chronologically are the best you could watch in order compared to the rest of the show. Any combinations of 3 seasons in a row. Now, I believe our first creation of the Arrowverse comes from Barry Allen in season 2, episode 8 of the Arrow. He comes, joins to work on projects. He's looking into weird case studies that to try to help him come to terms and explain what happened to his parents. And it's overall, like I said, the first few seasons of Arrow is great setup for future characters, villains, and arcs. And it's set up the Flash season 1 perfectly. Now, I don't believe he gets struck by lightning until Arrow season 3, which literally a whole season later. And by then, like I said, the Arrow was already so well established that of course this creation of a whole universe connected with all these big plots and stories that from the comics could finally take place also helped with the popularity of the show. But like I said, Arrow was already a mainstay to me in the superhero genre of TV shows, the biggest in my opinion for TV shows since Smallville. But of course, a character like the Flash is a welcome addition to the world. To seeing him and the Green Arrow link up, that's just fucking cool. That's insane. That's epic. It was refreshing, especially because we really haven't seen him interact with any other necessary heroes of the DC world. So of course it was welcomed by the fandom of the Arrow and of course the Flash and DC Comics. But then it got a little strange. I believe the next show introduced into the Arrowverse was Legends of Tomorrow. Now what Legends of Tomorrow does is they take characters that are not really utilizing in the Arrow and the Flash, like Sarah Lance, Leonard Snart, the little fire dude, can't remember his name, and they basically put them on this team of legends, and they go back in time trying to prevent supervillains from breaking up time itself, stopping time polarities, I guess. I don't really know. I tapped out of this show after 2 seasons, I believe. And of course, after the Legends of Tomorrow, we get our third person into the big three to represent our Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman of this universe. We now have the Green Arrow, we have the Flash, and of course now we have Supergirl, who also was a welcomed addition to this world and to this story. Like the plots and storylines, like I said, that they were able to do from bringing this world connected together were huge and fun, exciting to watch. Literally every season a new character, show, or anything was added into the Arrowverse. Everything got bigger, hyper, more exciting for fans, and we ultimately got crossover episodes now every single season, where you have to watch, say, episode 8 of every single show to get the full totality of the story. And that was a pretty cool concept and idea to get viewers to other shows, to interconnect the world, always bring these characters together at least once a year. But doing this, in my opinion, and I know some people might disagree with this, it hindered the Arrow and everything they built and worked for in the earlier seasons. It basically altered the whole show and what it was. And that's because the thing that I believe made Arrow the most popular was its down, gritty to reality, focused on the city, small scale events, not necessarily these big superpowers and catastrophic world ending takeovers. Now, once it became part of this Arrowverse and something bigger, the plots and stories were kind of convoluted, contrived, and ultimately changed the view on the show, The Arrow, because they couldn't just do small, basic local city things anymore. So on one hand, we have a guy with a bow and arrow who loves his city and wants to save it, and then on the other hand, we have a group of people traveling around the world, past, present, and future, trying to fix time, trying to stop evil. Then we have another person who could run into the past, have life-altering and changing events that affects the rest of the Arrowverse around him. And then we include another girl who was an alien from another world, another planet. Now, while all this is cool and exciting and fun, like I said, I don't think it makes sense in specific to the Arrow show and world, or at least how it was set up in the beginning. I feel like because it was part of this interconnected world, that became more of what it was there for. Because like I said, it should have ended after season 5, but because he was kind of the face of this world, they kind of had to keep him lingering around a little longer until he got his moment at the very end. And again, to reiterate, to make sure you're following me, the problem with this is the Arrow was already 3 seasons in, basically 4 or 5 by the time some of these other shows like Batwoman or Black Lightning and all these other shows, by the time they got introduced, so much of Arrow's show and story and world was already told. So they were left with scraps, basically trying to piece together stories until they get to the crossover episodes, because that's how important this character was to the franchise and to the world. It's called the Arrowverse. Now, I think this overall gave us a lot of great and amazing content of some of our favorite superheroes and villains by connecting these characters, these worlds, all these shows and spin-offs, bringing them together that we would have never otherwise got without this. But I do think for the Arrow show specifically, it does kind of impact what the show was made from the beginning and how it altered and changed throughout all the seasons. They of course gave us cool hype moments. Once again, like I said, the crossovers, the race between the Flash and Supergirl, the fight between Arrow and the Flash, all it was just so fucking cool. All of them trying to fight Supergirl to train for the aliens that was coming their way, and we kind of finally got our creation of this world's Justice League, which was pretty cool as well to see. Like I said, we got a lot of great moments from this, and I think a lot of people in retrospect just look at it as one big connected universe. But if you take it show by show, it's easy to see that there's no way Arrow benefited as much from this world as every other show did from Arrow. Like I said, he's the beginning. He started all this. He was what got them all here, and ultimately this caused the Arrow to run on way longer than it should. And that brings us to our next section of this video. None of these shows got better with more time, seasons, episodes, and experience. They got worse. So because the Arrow was connected to this big universe with all these other characters impacting his verse and vice versa, oh, that's a lot of verse being said. Whoa. I didn't even try to do that. Sorry. His show basically had to continue on though and keep going for the sake of him kind of being the face of this universe, of all these characters, him being like the pseudo leader of this world. And I think that ultimately led them to having more and more seasons that got dragged out with less interesting villains, worse plot points, and we're gonna get into the storylines, the love storylines. It literally started to feel like soap operas more than a superhero TV show. And the creation of the Arrowverse definitely is what led to this, I believe. Like, when I think about everything that took place because it didn't end after like 5 seasons, like literally impactful big moments. I remember Laurel Lance, she died in season 4 towards the end by Damien Dark, but then I saw that she came back. So I wanted to look into how she got back. Apparently Barry opened this world of Earth, and so they got a Laurel from Earth 2 who isn't that Laurel, but now she's a DA again, and she's kind of changing, going on an arc of becoming their Laurel and seeing Detective Lance as her father. It was just weird trying to like make her Laurel, but she's not Laurel. It's kind of like how the Flash doing with all of the, what was the guy's name, is the Dr. Harrison Wells. It's kind of like that, but this killing off a key impactful character like this, she should have stayed dead. It was a meaningful moment. And like I said, I believed it should have ended after season 5. Once the flashbacks was done, his journey and everything, it ended. We were done with this character. He accomplished, achieved, changed, developed his arcs up and down like a roller coaster. He did everything he needed to do. Because of this interconnected world, there was more for him though, and it could have been better off if they just brought him back every once in a while for the crossover episodes. But once again, like I said, he is kind of like the face of this world. So he had, his show, of course, had to continue on. And I honestly don't think there's too many shows in the history of television in general that gets good past or still excels past 6 seasons. I don't know. You guys can leave some down below in the comments. But no shows really are just stay top tier past 6-7 seasons, especially. So in the superhero genre, that is definitely not gonna happen, because in the superhero genre, you need some form and level of consistency for things to make sense. And as the shows go on and get longer, you could tell writers forget what they wrote in the past. Things don't add up. They get more convoluted, confusion, contrived. It just overall, it starts to fall off. And once again, the Arrow was the best for me when it was nitty gritty, down to earth, a man fighting to save his city. And I feel like that's why everyone loves Daredevil, which once again we're gonna talk about sooner or later. We just have to. But Daredevil ended after 3 seasons, and I know it's being revived, but it's got so much star power and fandom because of how early it ended. It's still loved to this day, or it would have never been brought back in the first place. And I feel like that would have been our view and aspect of the Arrow if it ended after 5 seasons. Because if it ended after 5 seasons, the only bad season would have been season 4. Like just downright bad, it would have been season 4. Every other season was good, great, or just excellent. So I feel like because it overstayed its welcome, because of this world it created, it kind of led to the detriment of its own show. And I think this last statement will make my point clear. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm talking about the audience scores, fuck the critics. We know Rotten Tomato critics, we don't trust them, but the audience scores. If you look at seasons 1 and 2, both have Rotten Tomato scores in the mid-80s. But if you notice, post season 2, only 2 seasons have a Rotten Tomato score over 60% for the Arrow. Out of 8 seasons, only 2 post season 2 only are over 60%. And I think that tells a lot, because the creation of the Arrowverse came into season 3 and on. And I feel like Like I said, for the Arrow to work the way it was in the first 3 seasons, it needed to be its own singular world and universe. Once it got created with everything else, it kind of relied on other things more than its own show. And the best thing about Arrow in the first 2 seasons, once again, was the world building and storytelling. And I think that just got ruined once everything else came into the fold. But instead of that, we had to get this continued love story between Oliver and Felicity. We had to get Laurel brought back from another Earth so her character or her actor could continue to be on the show, and a whole bunch of shit that did nothing but hurt the show in the long run. Like, I literally think the Arrow could have been one of the greatest superhero TV shows of all time, and that's why this is a disastrous downfall, in my opinion. But overall, that's it for this video. You guys can feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. You can check out my Gotham video. Like I said, this is superhero TV series month for this channel. We're going to go over a lot more. Actually, at the time of recording this, I don't have the one I'm going to do next. I just knew I was going to do Gotham, then Arrow. So you can put down below in the comments which one you would like to see me talk about and dive into. As usual, like I said, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.